Hi, Democrats. Today is Tuesday, April 5th, and it's time for the Chair's Daily Live. It's not Happy Tuesday. So I have a lot of stuff to talk about today, and I'm going to try to breeze through it so that I don't exceed my 15 minutes that I try to come onto your screens for. So the first thing I want to talk about is that today is an election day in most of Oklahoma, and it's mostly school board races. So first things first, if you haven't voted yet and you know there's an election, it is 4:19 by my clock, which means you have 2 hours and 41 minutes to cast your vote. And it is very important. A lot of school board races are won on 300 and 400 votes total because folks do not show up. Something like 15% of folks show up to vote for school board. And right now, unless you live on under a rock, you know that right now, what's happening in our education system in Oklahoma is top of mind. And to let those races be decided based on 1 or 2 votes, based on 300 votes total, is kind of shameful because those folks affect your everyday, day-to-day life. They affect our future because they affect our kids. And right now, there is an attack, a full-out attack on our education system. So we need you to show up for the school board races. So if you haven't voted, stop watching me, go get in line, and go cast your vote. And I'm telling you, sadly, it won't be a line. You'll be able to get in and get out in 15 minutes. It won't be a line. Go cast your vote. Okay, so there's that. Let's talk about why casting your vote is super important. I was just going to talk about voting and some of the things we have going on about campaigns. And if I still feel up to it, I will talk about that. But I want to talk about today in Oklahoma. I am in Oklahoma City today taking care of some personal issues. And so I wasn't able to attend the Bands Off rally that was happening at our Capitol today. And it was about asking our legislators to stop restricting and limiting access to women's health care. And I'm just going to call it that, women's health care. Stop trying to control women's health care. Stop being in the way of women's health care, particularly if you're not in that woman's family or that woman's doctor. But even though there were people there to express their views, even though there have been letter writing campaigns and folks going around to each legislator one by one, today in the House in Oklahoma, with a vote of 70-14, they passed a bill that says any doctor who performs an abortion in the state of Oklahoma can get 10 years in prison and up to $1,000 in fine. Now, they will brag, and you will see it. They will brag that somehow that they are protecting women and somehow they're protecting the sanctity of life. And I contend and will not be talked out of it that this has nothing to do with the sanctity of life. This has nothing to do with protecting women. This has everything to do with performative legislation aimed at controlling the bodies of women. Full stop. We know this because from time immemorial, making abortions illegal does not end abortions. What makes a woman have more of an availability to choose to have the child is making sure that she can afford to raise a child when it gets here. That's what goes into a woman's calculus when she's deciding whether or not she's going to carry her pregnancy to birth is, can I afford it? Do I have access to health care so that I and this future potential person will be able to have health care once we're walking around? Will I be bringing a new life into a safe home? So if we actually cared about the lives of future children, we would make it easier for people to choose birth. We'd make it easier for folks to make the decision. A lot of my Democrat friends and some of you who are watching me are not going to like what I'm about to say next, but this is Alicia's conviction, not necessarily the chair, but Alicia's conviction that abortion should be legal, safe, and hopefully rare. And the way that we do that is that we don't criminalize the act of abortion. We don't threaten the rare few doctors that we have, and we make the choice easier. Gyneticians, that's exactly it. We make it where a woman A doesn't have to deal with the gender pay gap. B, we raise minimum wage so that it is a living wage. We stop all of the bad policies that are allowing rural hospitals and other hospitals to close. We make access to healthcare more valuable and we more available, and we deal with the violence in the home, because those are the decisions. I have never had an abortion, not as any of you guys' business, but I know a lot of people who have that I love and care for, and some people not so much. However, but in my teens and 20s, when I'm talking to my peers who were trying to make that decision, it went into, will this stop my future? I just learned this year that if you go to a Christian university and you um, are pregnant, you get kicked out of school. You lose your scholarship. You can't finish your education. How does that help that pregnant person? How does that help that potential child? It doesn't. It is a penalty, and this is one more penalty. Let me bring it back around. This is why it's important to vote every time. Every time that your precinct is open, you must vote, because 70 legislators in our state house, 70 legislators said this was a good idea. That is not what Oklahomans want. They will tell you that. Meanwhile, they know that they or someone they care about has had to make the tough choice to have an abortion. If we learn nothing from Texas, is that making ridiculous laws that make it difficult for women to access health care doesn't end the health care. They just go somewhere else. So this bill, if it should become a law, and our governor has already said he's going to sign everything that comes across his desk, won't end abortion. It will just end abortion for for marginalized folks, folks who can't afford to go to another state, folks who have limited access to health care. That's who it's going to affect. Financially well situated people will still be able to go out of town, go to Aunt Susie's, and take care of what they have to take care of. Oklahoma providers have seen an 800% increase, and that's true. 800%, because it didn't end abortions for people who live in Texas. It didn't. It just ended abortions in Texas and shipped them here. And so now, do our women who are already in crisis, because if you're making that decision, you're in crisis of some sort. Our women who are already in crisis are now going to have to go to Kansas, New Mexico, Arkansas. Are we shipping our problems somewhere else? And I agree with you, Linda. Why don't we do things like making sure that the kids who are here have access to well funded public education, access to healthcare? That's what we need to be focusing on. We need to be focusing on taking care of the Oklahomans who are here, and stop with this performative legislation. And that's all it is. It's all it is. It is our legislators trying to look like, the tough guy, that they passed this legislation that doesn't help anything. It doesn't. It exacerbates what they think the problem is. It just makes what they think the problem worse. They make it into a bigger problem. It wouldn't be a problem if they would just stay out of it. Wouldn't be a problem if they would just stay out of it. This is why it's important that you vote every time your precinct's open. So I'm going to reiterate my plea. If you haven't voted today and your precinct is open, stop watching me. Go vote. Go vote. We have got to let our voices be heard. Go cast your vote. If you haven't voted yet today, the polls are open until 7 p.m. Now, 70 of our legislators in our state house voted for this ridiculous bill. 70. This illustrates the reason why we need to change who's representing us over on 23rd Street in Lincoln. We need to change who's representing us. Next week is filing period for folks who want to run for office. So if you're just kind of thinking about it, reach out to me. Reach out to me. Reach out to somebody you know who's involved in party politics. Let's get you set up. Let's get your questions answered. Let's get you ready. Next week is filing. It's April 13th through 15th. We have to change who is serving at the Capitol, because this kind of nonsense doesn't make Oklahoma better. We need more folks at the Capitol, because I don't want to discount the hardworking folks who are there. We need more folks at the Capitol who are focused on bills that actually improve the lives of Oklahomans. And the way to do that, we have to elect more Democrats. We have to elect more Democrats. 70 to 14 is insane. I don't even want to talk about the folks who decided not to vote. I was going to talk about more, but I don't want to lose sight. Today is a sad day in Oklahoma. Today is a sad day in Oklahoma, but it is illustrated. It raises the importance of everybody participating in voting, because this is what happens when we stop paying attention. This is what happens when enough people aren't paying attention and letting their voices be heard. This ridiculous penalizing doctors. This one penalizes the doctor, not the pregnant person. It's sad. It's depressing. And those words aren't adequate to um, express how frustrated I am right now. It's, please, if you somehow are watching this and you're not registered to vote, please register to vote. If you are watching this and your precinct is open and you haven't voted, please vote. If you are somehow watching this and you've kind of been thinking about running for office, but you're not sure, please reach out. We've got to change who's representing us at the Capitol. You guys have a better day than I'm having, and I'll see you tomorrow at 4:15.